Imagine walking through this really beautiful upscale neighborhood right after a massive hurricane has blown through. It is just completely chaotic.
Oh, yeah, like total devastation.
Exactly. Some of the houses, the ones that looked absolutely stunning just yesterday, they are flattened, completely leveled. But then you look next door and there's a house standing perfectly intact.
Right.
The paint might be chipped, the landscaping is a total mess, but the physical structure is completely solid. That hidden foundation, the steel reinforced concrete poured deep into the ground where nobody could see it, well, that is exactly what we are dissecting today.
It is, it's the eternal tension between cosmetic construction and structural integrity.
Yeah.
And when you apply that architectural lens to human psychology, the results are just incredibly revealing.
Yeah, they really are. So today's deep dive is a fascinating, maybe potentially uncomfortable, but deeply necessary look into how we build our identities and our careers. Our source material today is a document detailing the inside-out build philosophy of Joseph Sack.
Right. And Zach is an independent builder, a founder, and someone who has spent, the last 36 years as an incredibly close student of human behavior.
Yeah, 36 years. And the mission for this deep dive is to examine Sack's concept of the frame problem, which is this idea that most of us are basically building our lives from the outside in. We're going to figure out how we can construct an unshakable internal foundation to survive all the massive technological and cultural shifts happening right now.
Which is so relevant right now.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is the frame problem?
So Sack uses this metaphor of a painting to explain human awareness. He argues that it is incredibly hard to see the big picture when you're the one trapped inside the frame.
Right, because you're just part of the scenery.
Exactly. When you are fully assembled into the standard life, like you get married at 30, you secure the 30-year mortgage, you finance the car, you curate the vacation photos for social media, you aren't observing the painting anymore. You are the paint.
Oh, wow. You are the paint. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and his vantage point is what makes this analysis carry so much weight. Because Sack has voluntarily lived his entire adult life outside that traditional frame. He calls it living without the institutional leash.
Which means no standard timeline.
Right. He bypassed the traditional marriage timeline. He didn't have kids. He never took on a mortgage that would tie him to a job he resents. And he basically avoided all the standard status quo detours.
Yeah.
Because he has lived outside that frame for nearly 4 decades, he actually has the distance required to see the whole picture.
And his primary observation from out there is that people are building their entire lives from the outside in. Like they're establishing the facade before they even pour the concrete.
Yes. And when you build from the outside in, your stability relies entirely on external factors staying frozen in place. The environment literally has to cooperate for you to feel secure.
Which it never does.
Right. So when one external piece cracks, a sudden job loss, a divorce, a shift in your industry's social status, the whole life collapses inward. Sack compares it to a Jenga tower at a bachelor party after the 3rd round of shots.
That is painfully accurate. I actually love the biological analogy he uses for this too, the hermit crab. It perfectly captures that sense of false security.
Oh, the hermit crab analogy is brilliant.
Right, because a hermit crab is an animal that walks around in a shell it did not build. It looks fully protected, completely at home, but it's a borrowed exoskeleton. Sack argues that most people are walking around like hermit crabs in designer shells.
Yeah, we wear these external markers, job titles, marriages, houses, our LinkedIn headlines, follower counts, as if they are our actual internal identity.
And when you feel hollow on the inside, you are forced to compensate on the outside. The source points heavily to vanity metrics here. Just think about the cultural obsession with digital filters like on Snapchat or projecting this hyper-curated, flawless exterior online.
It acts as armor. It is literal structural compensation for a hollow interior. And Hollywood serves as the ultimate live demonstration of this outside-in collapse.
Oh, absolutely.
You have individuals with the most elaborate external foundations imaginable, immense fame, staggering wealth, global recognition. But because there is often no load-bearing internal architecture beneath all that attention, the moment a single external pillar wobbles like public opinion shifts or a movie flops, you see these massive, very public psychological meltdowns. Every pillar holding them up was external.
I do want to challenge this a little bit, though. Is external validation inherently a bad thing? I mean, think about it like scaffolding around a building. Scaffolding is actually incredibly helpful when you are constructing something new.
Sure, yeah.
It gives you access, it helps you reach higher levels, it provides temporary safety. The scaffolding itself isn't the enemy.
Scaffolding's a great analogy, but the danger Sack points out is that people get so used to the scaffolding, they stop building the house entirely. They just decorate the scaffolding.
Wow.
They just live on the planks. Exactly. They move their furniture onto the wooden planks and call it a home. But the scaffolding is meant to come down eventually, so the building can stand on its own.
So, to you, the listener, I want you to think about your own designer shells right now. What are the external things, the title, the relationship, the social standing that you are currently using as scaffolding? And what would actually happen to your sense of self if that scaffolding cracked tomorrow?
That is the big question. Because if we are entirely reliant on these external shells, we have to ask what actually happens inside the brain when someone threatens that shell. Sack argues this isn't just a psychological quirk, it is a biological atrophy.
He introduces this concept regarding inherited stability, right? Stating that a trust fund is not a foundation, it is a ceiling disguised as a floor.
Yes, that line is such a gut punch. And he isn't just talking about financial inheritance, he is talking about the trust fund of identity, inherited confidence.
Like getting a prestigious degree handed to you.
It's exactly. Or a career path cleared by family connections. Or a social circle that just came pre-assembled. You are handed the keys to a fully furnished house, but you have zero idea how to fix a leaking pipe at 2 in the morning.
Because you never had to build in the weather.
Right. You haven't developed the internal mechanics to handle a crisis.
We live in an era where you can order almost anything with a single click on Amazon Prime, but you cannot order resilience. There is no 2-day delivery on interior architecture. You only develop it by surviving hard things early on.
And when modern convenience allows you to bypass that struggle, you pay a steep biological cost. Sack points straight to the amygdala for this.
The fear center of the brain.
Exactly. We know it evolved for physical fight or flight. Thousands of years ago, if a predator was chasing your ancestor, the amygdala fired, adrenaline flooded the system, and they either ran or fought. The physical action of running or fighting literally cleared the stress hormones from their bloodstream.
But we don't have saber-toothed tigers chasing us to the grocery store anymore.
Right, and Sack argues that modern comfort culture has effectively atrophied this system. Because we aren't facing physical predators, we are facing social media algorithms and inbox notifications.
Those algorithms are literally designed to keep the brain in a low-grade loop of perpetual stimulation. You get a spike of outrage followed by a spike of validation.
But because there is no physical release, you aren't literally running away from an angry tweet, the cortisol never clears from the bloodstream.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The brain is left in a permanent state of high alert, and the result is an epidemic of overreactive nervous systems. We have people walking around with atrophied amygdalas who literally process a constructive critique from a manager or a snarky LinkedIn comment as a lethal predator attack.
This raises an important question, though. Imagine how exhausting it must be to have your entire identity on the table every single time someone offers feedback.
Oh, it would be paralyzing.
If your foundation is entirely external, any challenge to your ideas feels like an existential threat to your actual survival. It creates this profound fragility. And I genuinely feel a lot of empathy for that, because modern comfort culture kind of accidentally crippled our emotional resilience.
It really did. And this internal fragility doesn't stay neatly contained in our own heads. It bleeds out into our day-to-day interactions, heavily influencing our relationships. Sack observes that this comfort culture has created a very toxic dynamic in modern partnerships, which he calls the relationship weight problem.
This is the dynamic where one person becomes the weight and the other becomes the weight bearer.
Yeah. Picture the partner who comes home every single day as the permanent victim. The boss is always the villain, the coworkers are always toxic, the world is always unfair, every story ends the exact same way, and crucially, the ending never involved their own accountability.
And the other partner just becomes the shock absorber. The insidious part is why the shock absorber stays in that role. At first, absorbing that stress mimics purpose. It feels like love. It feels like you were being deeply supportive.
But the source points out the underlying mechanics of this 80-20 dynamic. It is just dysfunction with good lighting.
Shielding someone from accountability isn't kindness, it's conflict avoidance. Comfort that enables a lack of growth is just apathy wearing the costume of support.
Well said. Now, Sack wades into some highly charged territory here, applying this exact same framework of avoidance and comfort to broader cultural pillars like feminism and religion. And just to be absolutely clear to our listeners, we are strictly remaining impartial here and just reporting on Sack's observations from the source text.
Yes, exactly. We are simply unpacking the source material's viewpoints, not endorsing them. We're just looking at his framework.
Right. So, from his purely observational standpoint, he argues that the current cultural iteration of the feminist movement often functions as a symptom of this atrophied amygdala.
His critique really focuses on hypersensitivity. He observes that nervous systems conditioned by algorithms rather than shared physical danger have created a highly reactive emotional pattern.
And this hypersensitivity frequently gets labeled as empowerment, but he argues its actual mechanical function is the avoidance of accountability. To illustrate the contrast, he points back to ancient history.
Yeah, he talks about ancient women who literally picked up axes.
Exactly. Women who faced real, chaotic, life-or-death situations right alongside men. Those women weren't fragile because they were conditioned by harsh reality. Sack's premise is that true resilience is only produced by facing genuine danger, not by curating a completely safe, comfortable environment.
And he applies a very similar structural critique to modern religion as well. And again, the argument isn't an attack on genuine, hard-won spiritual faith. He is analyzing the performance of spirituality.
Read the social performance.
To many, he argues, religion functions as just another hermit crab shell.
It becomes a way to use church membership or religious signaling as a social identity to demonstrate virtue to the outside world. It basically bypasses the intensely difficult, quiet internal work that true faith and character actually require.
It is a beautifully decorated shell, complete with a supportive community and nice music on Sunday mornings, but it remains entirely external.
Exactly.
So whether we are analyzing a marriage dynamic, a political movement, or a church congregation, Sack is fundamentally critiquing our human tendency to use groups and partners as shields. We use external structures to block the discomfort of personal accountability.
And to understand why we crave these external structures so deeply, we have to look at the historical timeline.
Yeah.
Our brains were systematically institutionalized over the last few centuries.
Let's go back to the 1700s, right before the Industrial Revolution. We had the cottage economy.
Right.
You were a craftsman, a weaver, a farmer. You made your own goods, sold your own labor, and you kept your own profit. You owned your output, and your authority was internal.
Industrialization completely dismantled that. It pulled people out of their autonomous cottages and forced them into factories. It assigned humans repetitive, machine-like tasks. The system literally conditioned people to suppress independent thought, follow a strict schedule, and obey institutional hierarchies.
Also that someone else could scale their profit.
Yes. And the conditioning didn't stop at the factory door. It was handed directly to the school system. The traditional school model wasn't designed to cultivate brilliant independent thinkers. It was reverse engineered to manufacture compliant factory workers.
Oh, totally. The mechanics of traditional schooling. Sit down, be quiet, raise your hand for permission to speak, do this highly repetitive math homework. It was literal behavioral training for institutional authority.
And people naturally wrapped their entire identities around the credentials and structures this system provided. Sack brings up a fascinating historical parallel here to illustrate how deep this conditioning goes, the arrival of the calculator.
Yes. When pocket calculators were first introduced into schools and workplaces, mathematicians and teachers absolutely panicked. They protested, claiming their entire profession was being erased.
Their panic reveals the exact mechanism Sack is talking about. Their identity was wrapped around the mechanical task of computing numbers, rather than the human capability of mathematical reasoning.
When the calculator took over the machine work, it actually freed the mathematicians to do real, complex human thinking. But they fought it because they confused the task for their identity.
The outrage was structural. Sack notes this pattern repeats every single time a new tool threatens an existing institutional framework.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about our education system like an operating system. It was installed in our brains a century ago to run Factory Worker 1.0.
Nice analogy.
But today, the environment has completely changed. We are trying to run 21st century software on an industrial-era operating system, and everyone's brains are crashing. We are terrified of losing the very structures that were historically designed to control us.
which perfectly maps onto our current cultural panic over artificial intelligence.
Exactly. Let's look at what SAC calls hamster work.
Hamster work encompasses the scripting, the formulaic emails, the templated responses, the data entry, the repetitive cognitive tasks that make up a massive percentage of modern white-collar jobs.
It is, by definition, machine work being performed by humans.
Right. It is mind-numbing, and because of recent automation, it is now completely unnecessary. But instead of letting the machines take over the machine work, people are violently clinging to it.
The source argues that companies are trying to use AI as just a slightly more expensive wrench. They adopt this hybrid approach where humans are still manually managing tasks that should be fully automated.
And that hybrid approach fails because it doesn't solve the underlying problem, it just adds technological complexity to industrial bloat. The AI outrage we are seeing right now is a direct mirror of the calculator panic.
It really is.
It is people fiercely defending their right to do robotic work that was never meant for the human spirit in the first place. AI basically breaks the illusion that our hamster work had inherent human value.
The realization that a machine can write your quarterly reports forces you to admit that your job was mechanical. But SAC points out a massive, empowering upside to this disruption: the reboot. He calls it the digital cottage economy.
The same automation that is dismantling the corporate factory model is simultaneously democratizing the tools of production.
Content creation, direct-to-audience platforms, AI production tools. These technologies allow individuals to bypass institutional gatekeepers completely. We have the infrastructure to return to the 1700s cottage economy model, where we once again own our output.
The psychological barrier to entry, however, is immense. Leaving the safety net of the factory requires you to trust your internal foundation over an institutional paycheck. SAC provides a case study of this with his own platform, Fairlink.
He actually walked away from highly comfortable, prestigious corporate hierarchies like Spectrum, right?
He did. He deliberately absorbed the financial instability and the social costs of leaving the system because he understood that the only way to truly protect his internal foundation was to own his output entirely.
That takes a lot of guts.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the tragedy of the modern era was never that AI was coming to take our jobs. The tragedy was that human beings spent over a century doing machine work, and we became so conditioned by it that we forgot we were ever anything else.
We forgot how to be human.
Yeah.
So if the external gates are falling, if the traditional jobs, the corporate ladders, and the status markers are actively being automated away, and the digital cottage economy is our reality, how does a person actually transition? How do you survive the collapse of the scaffolding?
SAC poses the ultimate diagnostic question. Who are you when the gates fall?
Wow.
When the job title is erased, when the industry pivots, when the social circle dissolves, what is left? The people who survive the transition are the ones actively engaged in the unfiltered build.
The unfiltered build is the exact opposite of the Instagram highlight reel. It is messy, it is inherently unglamorous, and it happens entirely in private.
Practically speaking, it means making career and life choices that look completely irrational to anyone still inside the frame.
Like what?
Well, it might mean taking lower-income bridge work just to keep your mental space free from corporate exhaustion. It means actively turning down prestigious promotions because the new role would require you to compromise your internal architecture or engage in those toxic 80-20 dynamics we talked about.
It is the deliberate accumulation of scar tissue. And you cannot post a photo of scar tissue with a cute caption for validation online.
No, you definitely cannot.
There are no milestone celebrations for sitting in deep discomfort and refusing the easy, externally validated path. But mathematically, that scar tissue becomes your load-bearing material.
Developing that material also requires a fundamental shift in how we consume information and interact with each other. The source draws a really sharp contrast between our modern distraction machine and the traditional concept of the campfire.
Right, the distraction machine provides the quick dopamine hit. It's the performative outrage we broadcast online for an audience of strangers, which everyone completely forgets 48 hours later.
It keeps our amygdalas engaged, but ensures we remain entirely stagnant.
But the campfire is different.
Very different. The campfire represents deep, often highly uncomfortable conversations. These are the kinds of discussions humans used to have before digital algorithms monetized our attention. Campfire conversations force genuine self-reflection.
And SAC notes a fascinating metric for evaluating these interactions, right? The silence that follows them.
Yes. If you challenge someone's worldview and they immediately fire back with a scripted talking point, They're in the distraction machine. But if they go completely quiet, it doesn't mean they ignored you. It means the idea landed somewhere uncomfortable, and they are doing the heavy internal work of processing it.
To you, listening right now, that is the exact mechanism we aim for with this deep dive. A campfire story. Something that might make you turn off the audio, drive home in absolute silence, and just sit with the discomfort because your framework shifted.
Discomfort is high-fidelity information. It shows you precisely where your foundation needs reinforcing.
We have covered massive ground today. We started by identifying those borrowed hermit crab shells we all wear, the titles and status markers we mistakenly use as a foundation rather than temporary scaffolding.
Right.
We explored how the factory mindset of our education system and the coddling of our modern comfort culture biologically atrophied our resilience, making us terrified of accountability.
Yeah, that was a big one.
But we also uncovered an incredibly empowering reality.
Mm.
The institutional gates are indeed falling, but the digital cottage economy is providing the exact tools we need to stop operating like machines and start doing truly human work again. Provided, of course, that we are willing to do the quiet, unfiltered work of pouring our internal concrete first.
It is a demanding philosophy, but an absolutely vital one for the technological era we are accelerating into. The foundation really must be built in the weather long before the storm arrives.
So what does this all mean? I want to leave you with a final thought, an exercise to mull over on your own. Take a look around the room you're in right now, the car you are driving, the office you are sitting in, the clothes you are wearing. If every single physical object, every job title, and every digital profile that signals your status to the outside world vanished instantly in a puff of smoke. Wait, no, just vanished in an instant. What is the very first internal skill you would rely on to start rebuilding? Don't answer right away. Let it linger.